Keep that station right where it is, because if you do, you're going to see a really, 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 really good show with our guest, Sheila Weinberg. She is the CEO of Truth in Accounting. Oh, you're going to find out so much. I mean, you're probably wondering as you watch this on August 14th, 2014. That's when we're taping. You're watching a little later. But I know you're still thinking and worrying, is the state of Illinois insolvent? Is the United States government and this whole country insolvent? Do we have to restructure our state employee pension obligations to get things right in the state of Illinois? Do we have to do even more? Do we possibly have to raise taxes, lower taxes? Should we change how we spend on education in the state? Should we change how much we spend for Medicaid? Oh, you're going to learn so much, so keep that station right where it is. And if you do, you're going to see a really, 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 really good show with our guest, Sheila Weinberg, who, of course, everybody would know. She is the CEO of Truth in Accounting. You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and Politics is our game. And we're back after that stuff you might have seen, well, recently. I think if we're watching the shows in the right order, maybe saw us dealing with a love guide, whatever that is. Well, Sheila, I'm sure, knows a lot about love, right?
Yes.
Of course, but she's not going to be talking about that because she's going to be talking about truth in accounting. She's going to be, as I promised, we're going to find out, is Illinois a sinkhole state?
Yes. Illinois is
what does that mean? Is this kind of a negative term? Do you think Pat Quinn, the governor of the state of Illinois, should take that personally?
I think all the politicians, current and past politicians,
and
should take it
future
personally.
too? Like, should Bruce Rauner, who's running for governor as the Republican nominee, should he take that as personally, that you're calling Illinois a sinkhole state? Because I know I've heard Bruce say he loves this state.
Well, we need to fix something too. I think he would like it more if we had our finances in better shape.
I don't know. Look, if you go down Lakeshore Drive at night, try this. Go on Lakeshore Drive, say get on in Hollywood and start going south to the city. Look at that skyline, maybe 5 o'clock on a pretty summer August day, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 7 o'clock where you can see the skyline. Oh, McCormick Place, Adler Planetarium, the Art Institute. This city has so much to offer. Why should we really worry about this stuff like accounting?
Well, because the citizens have not been given enough information to make a knowledgeable decision about who to vote for and the finances of their state. The city may look good, but financially it is not in good shape.
Really?
The city, when we did our study for 2012, their per taxpayer burden was $19,000.
The city?
The city,
Chicago.
the city of Chicago.
$19,000 per taxpayer?
It's kind of like, Jeff, if you went and got ahead and you built a new addition to your house and had a lot of construction and got it done, and you put that on your credit cards, your house would look better, but your credit cards balances would be in horrible shape. And in essence, that's what the city and the county and the state and the federal government have done.
And is the problem, so the city and the county and the state and the country all have an enormous problem in terms of their solvency long term. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, we identify Illinois as one of our sinkhole states, and that means they don't have enough money to pay all the bills that they have accumulated so far.
So when they say, as they did this year, fiscal year 2015, I think the Democratic and Republican leaders, State Representative David Harris, just on our show in the last few weeks ago, you know David, right? He's a good guy. He wouldn't lie, right? He said basically the 2015 fiscal budget was balanced. He said you can define it a few ways, but if you look at revenue and if you look at expenses, pretty much it's balanced.
It all depends on how you count.
How you count?
How you count.
So are you quibbling? Do you think he's got revenue right, probably?
He may or may not.
That's not your main concern. Your main concern would be about the expenses, right?
The expenses, that they don't include all the expenses. They do checkbook accounting, okay? So if you incur a cost and you get an invoice from the vendor, You don't have to include that in your balanced budget calculation unless you write a check for it.
And that to his credit, and David's a Republican spokesman for one of the budget committees in the State House. And if you look at expenses over fiscal year 2015, that's June of this year, or June a few months ago, to June of next year, and you estimate the checks you're going to have to write for that year, you can have a balanced budget. I think your point is, in future years, you have obligations now that you know you're going to have to cover, and those known obligations are not taken into account by your current budget, right?
Yes.
But he would say they shouldn't, because the current budget just deals with expenses projected for 2015.
They do not include all the current expenses.
They don't include all the current
They do not include
Which ones
all.
don't they include?
Again, they only include the checks that they write. So if
when
I
you
don't,
say if you okay, but if you
remember
don't have
how
to
the
write
state
a check,
is has $5 billion of unpaid bills.
But say give them that.
Those bills were not included in the balanced budget.
Right, but give them that. And if you want to say the balanced budget is balanced, and David, to his credit, mentioned that. He said we have these $5 billion or so in unpaid bills. If you don't count that, then the budget's balanced.
Well,
would you give them that? Is that right, though?
Why would you not count
No, but just
that?
for the moment. I'm just trying to
Again,
get
yes,
this.
they're doing a check. The state constitution says that the definition of a balanced budget is your funds available have to equal your expenditures.
Right.
Okay, so let's look at the funds available side.
Right.
Jeff, if you borrow money, does that not become available for you to spend? So they can balance the budget, and have in the past balanced the budget by borrowing money.
By borrowing money.
And then they only use the term expenditures, not, you were saying expenses.
Okay, expenditures. It's kind of the same thing.
No, expenditures are only the checks I write. So it is, the other big example is pension, okay? A part of people's compensation packages, they get salaries. The state includes the salaries because they write the check. But they don't include the pension and the retiree health care benefits that the employee earns. That's part of their compensation package.
But they're not going to have to write a check for those things until after 2015.
Why should a future taxpayer have to pay those?
No, but just hold on for a second. Just answer my question. You'll get your turn. They don't have to pay or write a check for those expenses that you refer to, pension and health care for retirees, until after 2015, after fiscal 2015. Am I right on that?
Well, they choose not to.
But they don't have to. I think
if they were truly balancing the budget, they would.
See, what you're saying, I think, let me just see, so I'm trying to make sure people understand this.
It is a complicated.
It's a complicated thing, seriously. And so, I'm just preparing for this show, I think I started to understand this, and I'm like a genius. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, folks.
We're trying to get the truth out here, Jeff.
Right. The truth shall set you free. Okay, I'm not a genius by any stretch. But seriously, I think what you're saying is, if you did this right, you would look at your expenses or expenditures that you have to pay post-2015, post-fiscal 2015, and you should set aside reserves.
Yes.
And that's what they don't do.
Right.
Whether it's the city, the county, the village, the state, the federal government, they haven't set reserves to enable them, when these things come due in subsequent years, to pay them, right?
Right.
So people, I think there is $5 billion in unpaid bills, and Governor Quinn says we're making progress. Maybe there were $6 billion or $7 billion, so we made some progress over the last few years. But the main thing going on here, I think, see, folks, we get right to we could end this show about 20 minutes early, because we get right to it. The main thing going on here is these future obligations, which in the state of Illinois are mainly state employee pension obligations that get very, very prohibitive, are expensive and get even more so in the out years. And no reserves are being set.
Right,
for
and
that.
Again, the public, it's all of a sudden, we're $100 billion in debt.
And that's only the state, right?
Right. And
Cook County has how much unfunded liability?
The city of Chicago has 19, and I believe Cook County has $3,000 per taxpayer.
Well, it's about $30 billion total.
Yeah.
I think. We have that somewhere here. But, okay, so whatever it is, say $30 billion for the county, 19 for the city, $100 billion for the state. The villages across the county could, I don't know, was that another 30, 40 billion? Some large number we'll come to later. So we're probably easily looking at about $200 billion for Illinois taxpayers overall that is unfunded.
Yes.
And the short of it, folks, now Sheila might not say this because she doesn't get into this area. You don't get into this area as to what some of the solutions are. I mean, I guess you would say one solution is you should just start, these governmental entities should start setting aside reserves.
And they should truly balance their budget, and if they truly balance their budget, they would set aside reserves.
Now, and there are two choices here, folks. See, we're getting right to this. I love it so much. You're a good guest because we don't often do this. Seriously. The issue here, as you're looking at this here, and you should be thinking about what do you want to do in terms of as a taxpayer and who do you want to elect, because people will have a choice in November for the governor between, there might be third-party candidates, but in the main between Bruce Rauner, the Republican nominee, Pat Quinn, the Democratic nominee, and in March the next year, or February, whenever it is, they may have a choice between Rahm Emanuel and an alternative for mayor. And one choice would be to elect people who say what you just said, we should set aside reserves. Another choice would be to elect people who say we should restructure pension benefits even more than we have, because that won't, even if that law is held constitutional, it won't handle that. Let me just finish. So you could say you've decided those pension benefits that we set for the future, some would say they're not yet accrued, but they are set.
No, they have been accrued.
Well,
the employee has earned them, so they are accrued.
No, but some people differ from you in using that phrase because it's very important in terms of the constitutionality. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. So when you say no, that's your opinion. And as we all know, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, that great senator, said, ma'am, you're entitled to your own opinion. Everybody's entitled to her own opinion.
It's not my own opinion.
But you're not entitled.
It's the way you do it.
But you're not entitled to your own facts.
Yeah.
And we have a difference here in the construction or assessment of facts. And I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but some people differ from you on that. So in any case, some people would say we need to go ahead and substantially cut these pension benefits, accrued or not, however you want to put it, that people are going to receive in the future. And other people say, no, keep the benefits the same, just raise taxes, okay? And other people would say, don't have to do that, just cut spending on current levels for education and Medicaid. I think that the one thing that's clear, I think, we said at the beginning of the show, the truth will set you free, shall set you free, something like that. I think that's John 32:8, right? One thing that's clear, we have to do something. We have to do one of those things I've just enumerated.
Well,
you have to cut taxes, you have to cut spending, you have to increase reserves, you have to cut pension benefits, because if we stay on this glide path we're on, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And
it's already gotten worse.
It's gotten worse. But it reaches a point where this, as you're driving south on Lakeshore Drive from Emmanuel, it's not going to look as pretty as it does now. Or Bruce Rauner or Pat Quinn, as you're looking at the wonderful skyline in the city, and you're looking across the state of Illinois, including southern Illinois and central Illinois, it's not going to look pretty. So it's time for our politicians to recognize that, as Hillary said, hard choices have to be made.
Right. And some people look at this as a problem in the future, but the state of Illinois is already experiencing it, where they issued a bond offering in early 2013, and they had to pull that thing back because people would not buy those bonds at the interest rate that was reasonable.
Right. So they were going to have to raise interest rates, offer them more because there's a risk.
Right.
That is because of these large unfunded obligations.
Right.
Those bondholders, if they purchase the bonds, might not get repaid.
Right. And
because I should have said, I gave you a list of things that has to happen. Another one could be you could default on your bonds.
Yes.
That's unpleasant for people who are thinking of buying bonds.
And the other current thing that's going on, and it's already happened, is you mentioned the $5 billion of unpaid bills. Well, that cost the state $300 million in interest for those unpaid bills. Imagine what you could do with $300 million. You could make the state prettier.
Well, but borrowing sometimes is okay, and incurring interest is sometimes okay. You agree. You wouldn't say who is it? I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said, neither a borrower nor a lender shall you be, or something like that. Never be a borrower or lender. Because we do say it's okay for people to take out mortgages. They become borrowers.
And we take
and they pay interest on their money that they have borrowed, and they enjoy a nice house, and they pay it back over 30 years or so. That's okay.
That's okay. And in our analysis, we do not include those type of things. We do not include capital assets.
Right.
We only include the debt that they should have been paid in the past and has been pushed on to future taxpayers.
Well, yeah. I mean, but not all states are in this problem, right? I mean,
no,
you
we
make that point.
We have six.
What kind of study do you do? Tell people a little bit about that.
We do a study called the Financial State of the States.
And where do people find this?
That's on our Truth in Accounting website, truthinaccounting.org.
Right.
And if you want even more detailed, you're getting really interested in this topic and want to compare how states are.
This is sexy. Really, folks, this is sexy. I mean, there's no other word for it because sex sells. This is really when you get interested in this and you get interested in these numbers. I mean, Sheila and her organization, you're rather precise.
Yes.
I mean, because you do have sunshine states.
Yes, we have sunshine states.
Top 5 sunshine states?
Nebraska, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Utah.
Those are the top. I thought.
And Alaska.
Alaska's like numero uno, right?
Alaska's number 1.
So were the voters wrong across the country when they doubted Sarah Palin? She was the governor of Alaska, and you're telling me Alaska is the number 1 sunshine state.
Well, what happened in Alaska is their budget is based obviously a lot on oil revenue, and they try to really balance their budget up there. So when oil prices dropped dramatically in a fiscal year, they had to do slicing and dicing in their budget, and they didn't want to do that.
Oh, they didn't want to do
Well,
that.
they did it, but they didn't want to continue.
Yeah.
So what they did is, you talk about reserves, they set 2 to 3 years aside of actual cash investments available to spend, and they have those assets, 2 to 3 years worth of revenue set aside, so when they do get lean years, they can go ahead and pay those.
They can sell those assets, and they're there as reserves, and then they can cover their current spending.
And they could.
So Sarah Palin did that?
Sarah Palin was part of the legislators, the prior governors. All of this is a cumulative effect.
All of you Sarah Palin doubters, I mean, we're nonpartisan here. I'm just pointing out. Like, I didn't do this whole show about that. I saw Alaska, and that leaped out. Because Alaska, when you say they're number 1, what does that mean in numbers?
They have it's about we're at $43,000 per taxpayer in debt. They're ahead that much per taxpayer.
They're about $47,000.
Ahead per taxpayer.
Ahead. So they got a surplus where we have a deficit.
Yep,
okay.
A long-term deficit.
A long-term deficit, okay. I mean, that's per taxpayer, right?
Yes.
So instead of, they have like this buffer, Alaska does, of $47,000 per taxpayer. In Illinois, we've got this burden on our backs of $43,000. Complete reverse, okay. So Speaker Mike Madigan, who's been Speaker now for the last 20 or 30 years, look, who can keep track? Senate President Cullerton, who's now been president for, 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. The Democrats, not to get partisan about this, but the Democrats in Illinois have had substantial majorities in the State House, or at least majorities. They're currently substantial, but majorities, they have had the majority in the State House and in the State Senate since, I believe, 2002. Actually, at the same time you started Truth in Accounting. So for 12 years, and that's also when they took the governorship. So, and basically they run the Illinois Supreme Court, which is supposed to be nonpartisan, just between us girls. Yeah, the Dems run it. So the Democrats have the Illinois Supreme Court for at least the last 12 years, longer. They have the Illinois State House, the Illinois State Senate, and the governorship. So I know you're not partisan, but should particular attention go to Speaker Mike Madigan and Senate President Cullerton and Emil Jones, who was Senate President before, and Rod Blagojevich and and Pat Quinn, who've been governor all those times in the state Supreme Court.
And I would take it also back to Governor Edgar, who again...
Oh, you really want to go back that far?
Because they set up the pension game at that point in time.
He said that they set it up in '95, so if they did it a certain way, that would have been okay. Can you blame Edgar? Because he hasn't been here since.
They set it up where it would really not fund it. The way they set it up, and
you think so?
Some of them... No, that's what the SEC
And if Jim Edgar were here, he would tell Jim that he set it up wrong?
Yes.
Because I could bring Jim here.
Yes.
In fact, we have.
The SEC...
We have for you just right now, coming behind that curtain. No, just kidding.
The SEC has said it does not fund it.
Okay.
The 1995 plan does not
fund So some
fund
blame
the
goes to Jim Edgar.
Yep.
Some blame, well, that's 90. He was there from 90 to 98.
Right.
George Ryan from 98 to 2002. And then before that, even Jim Thompson. So for 25 years or so, 26 before 2002, the Republicans had the governorship, and you're saying they get some of the blame?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then they have the state Senate, and the Republicans, to be fair, have the state Senate prior to 22.
The elected officials have year after year after year told the people the budget has been balanced. Okay. Now, the budget has not been balanced. It has not included...
We've made that clear, because they don't set aside reserves.
They don't include all the compensation costs.
And you know what some people would say now, you know what John Tillman would say, I think, or Jean, we'll see coming up as our guest, Jeannie St. Ives, no, Jeannie Ives, got that wrong, sorry Jeannie. Jeannie Ives, state rep, she would say we just have to really substantially cut pension benefits for state employees.
I'm a state employee. I have
You are a state employee?
No, I'm just pretending.
Oh, okay.
I have a compensation package. Remember I talked about that full compensation package.
Oh, you're saying hypothetically if you were a state employee,
and
that person has a
salaries,
compensation package.
Yes,
I have
salary.
Yeah.
And then as part of my compensation package, you have promised me these pension benefits.
When you say you, who is you?
The legislature. The state has promised me this.
The legislature.
The
legislature.
Yes, has promised me these pension benefits, and they've promised me these retiree health care. Part of my compensation package. So I have worked hard, assuming that deal goes through.
They made a
so
mistake.
why should I take the cut?
Mistake.
Why should they take the cut?
Well, here's several reasons. I could say this, okay? Nobody's tried this. I always like to throw out ideas here. God. Well, one is, they made a mistake. And there's a well-known doctrine, actually in the state of Illinois. I'm giving you folks a hint for legislatures. In the common law, it's actually common law. It's not like statutory. It's called the commercial impracticability doctrine. Have you ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. See, in the Uniform Commercial Code which is across the states who have adopted this, I think it's 2615. See, I know John 328, and I think it's UCC 2615, commercial impracticability. When you have debts, when you have long-term obligations that are commercially impracticable for you to pay, you can get out of them.
Yes.
Okay? So I think the state now realizes they made mistakes. Speaker Mike Madigan, Jim Edgar, a bunch of you politicians. The citizens didn't make mistakes. They trusted, their mistake was to trust these people. And you as an employee, your mistake was to trust them.
Yes.
Because if you listen to John Tillman, you should have asked for a 401k, which would have given you control over your pension.
I was promised the benefits. Why would I? I'm just playing devil's advocate.
But you're right. That's what you should learn. Okay, this guy. See, it all comes back to free to choose, okay? Let's see if we can get that shot maybe up there. We'll see free to choose, Milton and Rose Friedman. Because he would say, one thing that Milton Friedman said, if you look at any social problem, okay, societal problem, and you trace it back far enough, you know what you find at the other end? Do you know what you find? Government. So I'm just egging you on a little bit. Maybe you've done good work, and you did good, Sheila. Okay, in your organization, in compiling facts and compiling information, giving it to the voters. Maybe you want to take some of your sharp analytics and do what I'm doing is now start tracing out some solutions, which does involve making some value judgments, which, good economists don't do. That's normative economics. They don't do, even though it's called normative economics. You need to make some value judgments because you as an organization once were sort of aligned with, what was that guy, Warren Rubin, right?
Yeah, Warren Rubin.
What was the name of that organization he had?
Concord Coalition.
Concord. And some people said, well, they were bipartisan, they were Democrat and Republican, but others, Republicans, were suspicious. They were a little more Democratic, and they seemed to come up with the idea if the federal government didn't have a balanced budget, the solution was to raise taxes. Is that a fair criticism? I mean, he's dead now.
There's only two ways to do it.
I can't speak ill of the dead, but Warren, I'm sure, was a good guy. But you see that criticism. Was that fair?
Yeah, well, there's two ways to do it. You either have to bring more money in or take less money out. So raising taxes would obviously bring more money in. You have to cut benefits.
Should you maybe look around you? If you look in the state of Illinois, we now have, I think this is a fact, maybe you can check this one, but it is said, and it's been said for a long time, if you look at federal taxes, if you look at state taxes, if you look at county taxes, other taxes, you total it all up. In total, taxpayers pay now, before we raise taxes to cover these other things that we haven't covered, about 40%, maybe more, 40% of their wealth goes to government. Do you think that's enough? Do you think government has enough? And maybe, just think, if you earn $1, do you think the government should let you keep 60 cents? Is that fair?
That's a judgment for the public.
But why don't you want to make that? Because, you see what I'm saying? Take it to that next step. Because
well, I am just thrilled that you're looking at solutions and that we've pointed out the numbers and how bad they are, that finally people understand that something has to be done. When we started this, nobody even understood that there was a problem. So we have gone ahead and calculated the financial state of Illinois and other states so citizens can know that something is wrong and we have to look for solutions.
And again, folks, you can find all this out by going to truthandaccounting.org, which is what I did. They did my homework for me. Thank you so much. Because seriously, without your organization, if I were trying to prepare for this show, say I had another guest, I could go to that website and I could sound somewhat knowledgeable, which is a real major accomplishment for me. No, seriously. But seriously, the bottom 5 states, the sinkhole states in your analysis, Hawaii, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Illinois, and then Connecticut, the clear loser, the biggest sinkhole state.
Believe it, Illinois is not in the last place. Connecticut actually beat us up.
Illinois has a deficit or a net. I don't know what
we
deficit
call it
the right
a
word?
Per taxpayer burden.
That's it. Better word. It has a per taxpayer burden of $43,400 per taxpayer, and Connecticut has $48,100. So we're not quite as bad as Connecticut, but we're pretty bad. And then if you look around, see, making my point a little bit just happens. Your facts making my point. Where is Texas? Well, Texas is a state that I don't think they have an income tax. You'd think they'd be in trouble. Actually not, because they're about, I think, according to this, instead of Illinois has 43,000 this burden, Texas has a burden per taxpayer of about 6,700. Or Florida, another state, without income tax, $1,900 per burden. So Illinois, income tax, 43,000 burden. Florida, 1,900. Which is better, Sheila?
Financially, the ones that have a lower taxpayer burden.
What would those states be?
Those would be Texas, Florida, other states that are in the middle.
Tennessee is like really low. They've got a surplus of 1,100.
Yes.
They actually have a buffer.
Yes.
And Tennessee, I believe, is also a no income tax state. Are we seeing, because did you see that book by, we had Steve Moore on the show recently. It's called An Inquiry into the Causes and Nature of the Wealth of States. Did you read it?
No, I haven't read that.
Have you heard of it?
Yes.
It does dovetail nicely with you. Have you met Steve Moore?
Definitely.
There you go.
Yes.
Do you like Steve?
Yes.
Good analysis? You folks are like, what do we call it? Sisters under the something?
Yeah. And we actually have his analysis on, we have a sister website called State Data Lab, and his analysis is on that website also. So if you want to compare the states even further, you can go to that website.
We've got to wrap this up soon, but I very much want to thank our guest, Sheila Weinberg. She is, of course, the founder and CEO of Truth in Accounting. It's a great organization. Go to their website. We don't endorse anybody, we don't endorse candidates, but it provides a lot of useful information. If you're a politician, if you're running for governor, Bruce Rauner, Pat Quinn, take a look. Truthandaccounting.org, right?
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And if you're in the village level, you've got problems too. Those villages are in trouble. Wilmette, Winnetka, all of you folks, you're screwed up. Your pensions are all screwed up. I can say that, it's true.
Well, we have a study on our website that shows that also.
Right, they got a study for everything.